You already know what it feels like. The alarm fires and your chest tightens. Not from surprise, but from a deep, exhausting dread. The room is likely still. Dark, the air slightly chilled. And standing upright feels like a monumental, impossible task. Your eyelids stay sealed. The physical weight of this moment is profound. It is not just a mild reluctance. Your limbs feel pinned, like someone poured concrete into your joints overnight. In the depths of sleep inertia, the brain hasn't yet rebooted its cognitive functions. You're operating purely on primal instinct, prioritizing comfort and safety above all else. And in that half-second between consciousness and decision, something inside you folds. The rational mind surrenders to the primitive brain. You don't choose to stay in bed. Your body chooses for you. Here is what actually happens. The alarm sounds. And your hand is already reaching, not to get up, to silence it. It is an act of pure muscle memory, a reflex designed to eliminate a threat. To protect your current state of homeostasis. You don't even process the clock or the responsibilities of the day. You simply react to the auditory intrusion by terminating it. Now here is the part no one talks about. You do eventually get up 30 or 40 minutes later. And the first thing you feel isn't tiredness. It is a toxic cocktail of anxiety, rush, and an immediate, heavy sense of failure. The extra sleep didn't nourish you, it only fragmented your resting cycle, leaving you groggy and completely disoriented. This is the specific wound, not that you can't wake up early. It is that you can't trust your own decisions past the threshold of sleep. This subtle self-betrayal bleeds into the rest of your day. If you can keep a promise to yourself at 6 a.m. A quiet voice asks how you can trust yourself with anything else. You've tried this before. Maybe not exactly this way, but something close. You set the alarm earlier. You told yourself tomorrow would be different. You even laid out clothes the night before. And for 2 or 3 days it worked. You rode the temporary high. You felt that Sunday evening motivation. Convinced sheer willpower would carry you through. That quiet collapse on day 4 or 5 isn't unique to you. It is the most common exit point in behavior change, not because the method failed. Happens because biological debt eventually catches up with psychological enthusiasm. The novelty wears off and the reality of the required energy expenditure sets in. But here is what no one tells you in that moment. Everyone who has ever shifted a pattern felt that exact same weight. The low energy on day 3. The mental pushback on day 5. You aren't experiencing a unique personal failing. You're experiencing standard biology adapting to a new metabolic load. Adaptation is entirely uncomfortable by design. The people who made early mornings automatic didn't have more willpower than you. They simply didn't interpret that rough patch as a personal verdict. They understood that fatigue is just a sensation, a simple data point, a body undergoing recalibration, rather than a sign they were fundamentally broken. Here is the quiet trick your brain has been running on you. It never says no directly, it just floods the moment with questions. How tired will I feel? Can I afford just 10 more minutes? What if my performance suffers today because I didn't sleep enough? Do I really need to work out, or would rest be healthier? This internal dialogue is dangerous because it sounds entirely rational. Now, you know the mechanism. Your brain floods the moment with noise. It disguises resistance as reasonable questions and keeps you pinned. So here is the counter protocol. You can't out-argue a brain fighting for comfort while you're half asleep. You must instead rely on pre-built environmental and psychological structures. To defeat the morning negotiation, you must engineer a new environment, an environment where waking up is the path of least resistance. The first wall you build is temporal. You pick a single wake time, and you weld it shut, not because discipline demands it, but because your brain can't negotiate with a fixed point. Honoring a variable schedule hands your nervous system a negotiation window, and it uses that window every single time circadian rhythms require anchors to function properly. Waking up at 6 a.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. on weekends means you're essentially inducing jet lag on yourself every single Monday. A locked time eliminates the mental energy required to decide when to rise. The second wall is chemical. Your brain doesn't resist waking. It resists waking into an absolute vacuum. When there is nothing waiting on the other side of consciousness, sleep becomes the only reward with a guaranteed return. You must artificially inject a dopamine hook into your morning. This isn't about Finding grand life purposes. It is the anticipation of premium coffee, or an undisturbed hour of reading, or just the quiet solitude of the house before anyone else is awake. The third wall is mechanical. You compress the decision window to zero. The moment consciousness hits, physical movement must begin. If you lie still and evaluate how you feel, you'll stay in bed. Action must always precede your motivation. The fourth wall is photonic. Light is not just ambience. It is a direct instruction set for your biological clock. Morning light commands melatonin production to halt. Darkness commands it to continue. You simply cannot wake up effectively in a cave. Opening the blinds to sunlight or turning on harsh overhead lights immediately signals your biological clock that the sleep cycle is terminated. The fifth wall is pressure management. Sleep isn't an accident. It is earned through accumulated wakefulness, physical expenditure, and controlled stimulation decline, and random daytime naps will bleed off that pressure. Late-night screen floods keep your system artificially alert. Waking up early actually begins at 8 p.m. the night before. If you mismanage your sleep pressure by consuming caffeine late or scrolling on your phone in bed, you sabotage the morning protocol before the alarm ever rings. The sixth wall is friction inversion. You don't just remove obstacles to waking. You also have to install obstacles to staying down. Put the alarm across the room. Keep cold water within arm's reach. Forcing your body to leave the bed to shut off the noise will break the massive gravitational pull of the mattress. Once you're vertical, you've won 90% of the battle. And the final wall is identity through evidence. Your brain doesn't believe declarations. It only believes hard data. So you track it on a visual calendar where you mark off successful mornings, providing undeniable proof to your subconscious that you aren't the person who snoozes. The first week will feel entirely wrong. Lower energy, slight cognitive drag. A persistent whisper that this isn't working. That whisper isn't feedback, it is the old system losing jurisdiction. And loudly protesting the inevitable transfer of power. Expect the discomfort and welcome it. It means the neurological pathways governing your old habits are beginning to atrophy. So here you are, you know the architecture now. You know your brain isn't broken. It is just running an outdated prediction model. It is trying to conserve calories and protect you from perceived stress. Completely unaware that, in the modern world, discipline equals freedom. That is the trap most people fall into. They hear wake up at 5 and immediately construct a fantasy version of themselves. Some disciplined monk who meditates at dawn and never hits snooze. And then they measure every morning against that absolute fiction. This kind of perfectionism is just a recipe for failure. You will have mornings where you inevitably stumble. The goal isn't flawless execution, it is consistent, imperfect repetition. Because identity doesn't shift through declarations, it shifts through repetition that your brain can no longer dismiss as coincidence. 3 days in a row at the same time, and your brain files it differently. By day 21, the physiological resistance dramatically drops. By day 60, the new pattern becomes your baseline default. Think about what that means for you specifically. Not in some abstract self-improvement sense, but concretely. Think about the hours you finally reclaim. Think about the quiet momentum of starting the day on offense, rather than endlessly playing defense against the clock. And the friction was never laziness, it was never some underlying character flaw. It was just a system responding logically to unclear signals. You gave it ambiguity, and it gave you resistance. By implementing these 7 walls, you remove the ambiguity entirely. But here is the part no one tells you. You still get to choose not to. And choosing not to isn't a failure either. Maybe your season right now just demands late nights. Maybe you have a newborn, or you're working a brutal shift job. Or you're in a creative flow state that peaks at midnight. A morning routine is a tool, not a moral obligation. You're the one who decides what the sensation really means. And now you know enough to make that decision before your eyes even open. The system is yours, use it when it serves you. And set it down when it doesn't. The power lies not in the hour you wake up, but in the intentionality of the choice you make when the alarm finally rings.